Recall when former MMA fighter and actress Gina Carano was canceled last year for making a comparison between the U.S.'s political climate and Nazi Germany? Here is what was posted on her Instagram story back in the day. Quote, Jews were beaten in the streets not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jewish.
A side-by-side comparison of Carano's post with one liberal actress, Susan Sarandon's, are, to some people's eyes, somewhat similar. Yet Sarandon has, in some people's eyes, gotten off relatively scot-free. Sarandon tweeted a photo that read, quote, it didn't start with gas chambers. It started with one party controlling the media, one party controlling the message, one party deciding what is the truth, one party censoring speech and silencing opposition, one party dividing citizens into us and them and calling on their supporters to harass them.
Yeah, we should be careful. This has been 24 hours. I don't know, Susan Sarandon might suffer some kind of consequence for this. But the point being, and what people have pointed out, I think rightly, is that while they weren't exactly the same sentiment, also Gina Carano had tweeted a picture that was described as being anti-Semitic. I remember this very clearly. So it's that table with kind of the powerful. It's sort of an anti-global or anti-kind of global world government poster that I think only 1% of the population would understand why there's an there's the eye in the pyramid, that kind of stuff. Yes, there are some among some people who are absolute information experts in hate crime type stuff could say well, this has been used in some anti-Semitic context. I think most people would have just seen this image as against the wealthy elites or some kind of global elites type thing. Mm-hmm. So that all ended. Gina Carano got in trouble for all of that, and it was eventually she was really canceled. She was a main character on The Mandalorian, the Star Wars show on Disney, and she was going to be the star of a spin-off series on her character. Mm-hmm. That they just dropped plans to do that because of this.
So let me ask you, what was Gina,
which I thought was unfair to her,
referring to? What was she alluding to with that tweet?
She was talking about the sort of silencing in general. I think alluding to sort of big tech deplatforming, maybe some kind, not being able to dissent on COVID stuff. I believe kind of general. Anti-consensus, anti-mainstream sort of sentiment that is now very popular among a faction of the right, but it used to not be necessarily coded conservative, which is in fact why Susan Sarandon was expressing a sentiment akin to that, sentiment that is not totally wrong or offensive. Maybe you never want to suggest that because this is wrong that the Holocaust is someone bears responsibility other than the Nazis, because absolutely the Nazis did it.
Yeah, but so there was that
and you also don't want to suggest, sorry to cut you, that anything else happening is akin to the Holocaust or akin to Nazism. It's always a bad idea to do who else, etc. This is just like Hitler. You're just always wrong if you did that, because nothing is ever as bad or as serious as that, etc. But
especially because there seems to be a wording difference there, where Carano said something about, it wasn't that Jewish people were being beat up by Nazis, which I think maybe that's nitpicking, but Susan Sarandon's statement was more, it started with things that were something short of literal Nazis and built. You could read Gina's statement as it's not that Nazis
I think hers was a little messier.
It was a messier draft. And another thing is, I was going to follow up by asking, what was Susan Sarandon's tweet perceived to be pertaining to? Was it about the recent Kanye West and anti-Semitism stuff, in which case I think there would be more leniency about bringing up the Holocaust.
You know Susan Sarandon better than I do, to be frank,
we have not chatted about this tweet. But if it were brought up in the context of the conversation about anti-Semitism that was sparked by Kanye West's remarks, I think that a lot of people would say it makes sense to bring up the Holocaust to talk about how anti-Semitism is bad. If it's being brought up more broadly in the way that Carano's tweet was, to just say something about impending fascism or whatever you perceive to be as a threat from your political perspective, that I can see why there is there's a criticism in either direction.
Well, Candace Owens, who is the Brianna Joy Gray of the right.
As I'm told frequently that I'm the Candace Owens of the left.
Well, she faced backlash for tirelessly defending rapper Ye's bombastic rhetoric, anti-Semitic rhetoric against Jewish people. And she has claimed free speech is under attack. However, in a tweet responding to one of her many critics, Owens tweeted that one of them threatened her. The critic wrote, quote, "Don't mess with the Jews," and directed the message at Owens and Kanye West. Yeah, Candace Owens has absolutely stood by Kanye over all this stuff. It was very interesting because, she's a high-profile commentator at the Daily Wire, which is was co-founded by Ben Shapiro, who is a notable political conservative, Jewish.
And PragerU, she's made the point
person.
of explaining that PragerU was founded, I think, by an Orthodox Jewish person, and she has raised that as a rebuttal to some of the criticisms. But here, the critique is not necessarily about whether or not she's standing by inappropriately and letting this not critiquing these anti-Semitic remarks, but whether or not she's a hypocrite with respect to some of her statements about cancel culture. Is the screen grab there that she is holding up as an example of her being targeted something that should be censored? Is she kind of consistently saying there's a line that gets crossed and people should be pulled off social media and censored if they really do threaten someone? Is saying, don't mess with the Jews, the level of threat that should get you pulled off of social media? And if so, I don't know how you can defend Kanye West saying, I'm going to go DEFCON 3 or DEFCON 4. I don't know which DEFCON.
I think it was 3.
DEFCON 3.
But what's the word?
5?
Well, one is a high state. Doesn't it go from 5 down to 1? And one is a high state of weariness?
DEFCON is nothing at all. Okay. But DEFCON 1, I'm not sure if it goes higher to lower, like degrees of burn or whatever.
What's the movie? Do you remember the movie where? Sorry, this is beside the point. I won't get into this. The War Games movie where the computer decides to launch all the missiles and they defeat. It's a great movie. They defeat the computer goes rogue and decides to start World War III, and they defeat it by making it play tic-tac-toe against itself and learning the only winning move is not to play. And then it doesn't launch the
nukes. I missed that, Jim, Robbie, but I'm curious to see what
a great lesson for our conflict.
Robbie,
anyway, sorry.
Is this? You have to answer this question. Is Candace Owens being inconsistent here and calling for the censorship of this person who's
there's always
on social media?
Look, cancel culture is a very difficult and very fuzzy and very inconsistent and frankly difficult, even if you're trying to be principled and consistent about it, as I strive to be as someone who is worried about cancel culture and talks about it a lot, and I try to be consistent on it. And sometimes it just breaks down because we do all instinctively want people who say utterly reprehensible things. We think it's appropriate for them to suffer some consequence that is proportionate to what they said so they learn better behavior and don't do it. The issue is that because of social media, it is basically impossible to make someone suffer the right amount of punishment. This isn't like, you did something wrong at recess and you're going to clap erasers after school. It's now everyone is going to be yelling at you, screaming at you about how you're the worst person ever for hours and sometimes days. And if you're a famous person, whatever, although Kanye is now losing significant wealth because of what he did, maybe you think that's justified, maybe you think that's fair. I don't know. I tend to think cancel culture isn't necessarily where already powerful, wealthy, famous people are being held, and it's fine to hold them to a greater degree of scrutiny. Although with my actors and actresses, I don't really care what they think. If you're worried about cancel culture, you should be more worried when ordinary people, working class people, lose their job because they did or said something wrong. That's really what we're getting at.
The little guy here said, don't mess with the Jews. Candace Owens thinks that's a problem. Kanye West, the big guy here, said, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. You decide tomorrow morning.
We report.
We'll be back.
Tomorrow on Rising, David Zweig will be with us. He'll weigh in on reporting about the impact of remote schooling on test scores.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
I had a friend of mine say that he found us on Roku. That's very exciting.
We've got one.
We got more than one, I think. Also, if you have questions, by the way, for The Hill, we've just launched group text with The Hill's editor-in-chief, Bob Cusack. You can sign up at thehill.com. Encourage you to do that. And Bree and I will be back tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Thursday? Yes, we will be back tomorrow. We hope to see all of you then.
Goodbye.